Testing? Okay. Hello. Hi, everybody. Miss B. Hanley here. And today we are continuing our reading of Scythe by Neal Shusterman. We are on part 2. We have 100 pages to get through part 2. So I think we should be able to get through most of it by the end of stream tonight. That should take us about an hour and a half. Hopefully we can get through that. I did want to do a fan cast before we started reading. I wanted to do a fan cast. So let's go ahead and take a look at. So we've got, let's see, how many characters so far? We've got Citra, Rowan, and Scythe Faraday. And I'm kind of hoping that we'll be able to not spoil ourselves, or at least spoil the stream. Oh, there's already, okay, so this one has 26. Let's go with the one that has the least. I don't want to do the whole series because I don't want to spoil myself because I haven't read the whole series yet. Okay, so, okay. There's kind of a spoiler on this page, and there's so many ads. Oh my gosh. Well, this is okay, though. This is okay. Yeah. Let's just take a look at the first 3 that they have. Okay, so they have Citra as... Let's take a look at the casting for Citra. So the one that's most voted is Zendaya. Oh, they've got another picture of her too. I like Zendaya. I also like Amandla Stenberg. Oh, yes. She was in The Hate U Give, which is an amazing movie and book. Zendaya. And then the second girl they have for Citra is Sydney Park, which I don't know. I don't know her. I don't know what other movies she's been in. Actually, she's known for her roles in Moxie and Wish Upon. Neither of those I've seen. Maybe I'll have to look those up. They also have Helena Howard. I don't know who Helena Howard is either. She looks familiar. She looks like she's been in something before. Madeline's Madeline and Shoplifters of the World. Again, I don't know who those people are. I don't know what those shows are. But Zendaya, yeah, I could see. I actually really like Ella Balinska as Citra. She looks a little like sassy, harder. Oh yeah, she's from England. She's definitely got that Brit smirk for sure. Run Street Heart Run, Charlie's Angels. Oh, she's in the new Charlie's Angels. I like that. I like her. She's probably my top pick. I'm gonna vote for Ella. Oh, I have to log in. Oops. I guess not. I feel like though she would be my vote. Ella would be my vote. Either Ella, I'd say Amandla is my second top pick. Yeah, Zendaya seems to be the top pick. I think she's probably because she's so popular. But yeah, I'd say Amandla or Ella. Those are my 2 top picks. My 2 big top picks, I'd say. Okay, then they also have a casting for Rowan. I don't like this original casting. They're at least the top pick. The top pick is, I guess the second top pick is Ethan Kutkoski. I don't know. He doesn't look like a Rowan to me. He looks more like Rowan's friend, Tiger. To me, at least. I feel like. What's he in? He's in The Unborn. Never seen it. Never seen that. But yeah, he feels more like a Tiger to me. I wouldn't put him as Rowan's character. I guess, Dylan O'Brien for sure. I would want us to just stay away from some of these big name actors. Okay, cats. Not today. why we closed the door. Getting some cat entertainment. Okay. Yeah, I feel like, you know, he's like getting so old now. I feel like you need to stick with younger. I like MJ. I feel like he's been in something that I've seen recently. Jungle Book. Okay. An Insurgent. Okay. Yeah, I'd say he's given me Rowan vibes. A little bit. I remember, I think it's Asa or Aza. He was in, what's that movie? What's that show? What's that movie? Yeah, it's Ender's Game. He was Ender. And he was in other stuff too, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if I'd want him as Rowan. I don't know. He's not giving me the Rowan. Yeah. Miss Pigren's Home for Peculiar Children. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Wow, he was in a lot of the big ones. And Hugo. I'm pretty sure he was also in Ender's Game. No. I feel like Finn Wolfhard would not. He's too much in Stranger Things for me. I feel like I know him too well from Stranger Things. Okay, listen, guys. Take your party elsewhere. Okay? Go. Go on. Okay, Marley, you can leave the room now. He's gone. Go on. Go. Okay. And this is why we don't have cats in the classroom, because they would be more distracting than the other students. Okay, yeah, I feel like none of these guys are giving me strong Rowan vibes. Maybe Tanner. Tanner, I feel like he looks too mean. Okay, so he's older. Yeah, I would want Rowan to have an older look, just because I feel like he's supposed to look older. I don't know, that's just me. I've never seen He's All That. I guess it's a remake, a twist on She's All That. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I'll have to look that one up. Aidan Gallagher. You know, none of these are really hitting it for me. Maybe. Some of them looks, I don't want to give anything away, but some of them look so mean. So I don't know if I would want Rowan to look so mean. Just because I feel like it makes his character harder to, like, empathize with. I think Tom Holland is marked as like an actor who's similar to these people. I don't think Tom Holland would do it for me. You know, I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. Okay, let's see. More against the main character, or the main guy, Dylan O'Brien. Yeah, I don't know. None of these guys seem to be doing it for me. Some of them just look too innocent, you know? Some are too innocent. Some of them look too evil. I like Tio, maybe. Maybe Tio. Maybe Tanner. I feel like Tanner's up there. I like Benjamin, actually, now that I'm looking at him, you know. Is he American? No, he's American too. Sci-fi series Deadly Class. Oh my gosh, I've never heard of these shows. I need to start watching more TV, apparently. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I'm feeling all these characters. I guess those would be my top. Tanner, Benjamin, Tio, maybe. Yeah. That's a tough one for Rowan. I feel like Rowan would be a really hard cast. Okay, Christoph Waltz for Scythe Faraday. Oh, yes. Yes. Okay, I'd be totally for it. But I also would be totally about Pierce Brosnan as well. I feel like Pierce Brosnan could definitely fit the Scythe Faraday. He might be too hard, though. He might be too harsh. So Christoph Waltz would be like a softer, I feel like a softer choice, you know? But that's a tough one. Viggo Mortensen. Maybe? I mean, I guess he's a good midway between Pierce Brosnan and Christoph Waltz, Viggo Mortensen. Who else do we got down here? We got Liam Neeson, No, feel like it would be too harsh. Mark Hamill, I don't know if that's even possible. I don't think it's possible. So that wouldn't work. I don't know who this guy is. Ben Mendelsohn son. Okay, he's in Ready Player One. Who is he in Ready Player One? Oh, he's the bad guy. He's the CEO of the bad corporation. Clint Eastwood. I don't know. I feel like... Who was I just thinking of? I was thinking of somebody who would be really good for Scythe Faraday. Oh. I don't know his name. I did meet him, though. I met him in real life at a convention. TV show. He's on a show called Eureka. Colin Ferguson. See, he looks like really wholesome. And I feel like that's what Scythe Faraday needs. You know, like almost like a goody two shoes face, which is what Colin Ferguson is. You know, he's got one of those faces that's like, oh, you can't help but love him. You can't help but be like, I want to please him. He seems like a nice guy. I want to make him happy. He seems like I should be on his good side, right? I don't want to do a crime around him because he could arrest me. You know what I mean? I feel like he would be a good Scythe Faraday. That's just my personal opinion, you know, because he looks like a good guy. And I think Scythe Faraday is supposed to be like a good guy, you know, like I think he's supposed to like give off that air of like, you know, I'm a down to earth person. I got a good heart. You know, Christoph Waltz has got a little bit of a gleam in his eye. Same with Viggo Mortensen. I feel like Colin Ferguson would be good. Pierce Brosnan too, though, you know. He's got that face. He's got a little bit more of an older face. Yeah. I feel like Colin Ferguson is going to be my pick for Scythe Faraday. Can I add to this? I probably have to make an account. There he is. Yeah, I have to make an account. I'll make sure to do that next time we try to make a fan cast. Maybe, can I do it for free? I hope I can do it for free. Let's see. I think I can do it for free. And then we can really start voting on who our favorite characters are, who should be our characters. Okay, let's look at, so we did Citra, Rowan, and Scythe Faraday. And if you're paying attention to the screen, you're kind of already spoiled a little bit. And we don't know who these characters are because we haven't met them. But I do like some of these picks. Not gonna lie, I'm not gonna be overly mean about it. Oh, those are good picks. Okay, so there's some good picks down there. I don't want to spoil too much, so we'll read this part and then we'll come back to the fan cast if we have time a little later. Okay, I want to read part 2 of Scythe. I am so excited because we really get into the story, as you know, and Rowan and Citra have officially started their training with Scythe Faraday to become Scythes. And if you are new to the stream, the synopsis is right there, and you can see what this book is about while I'm reading. In a world with no hunger, no disease, no war, no misery, humanity has conquered all of those things and has even conquered death. So now there are Scythes, the only ones who can end life, and they are commanded to do so in order to keep the size of the population under control. So Citra and Rowan are our two main characters. The perspective in the book changes from Citra to Rowan at certain points in the book. And they are chosen to apprentice to a Scythe Faraday, a role that neither wants. So neither of them want to be Scythes, but that is like the whole way that you become one, is by not wanting to be one. These teens must master the art of taking a life, knowing that their consequence of failure could mean losing their own. Right now, Citra and Rowan are competing with each other to obtain the role of a Scythe. And yeah, so the one who doesn't win, they're going to go home. They've just begun their training with Scythe Faraday, and they've left their former lives behind. So they're basically full-time apprentice for Scythe Faraday, watching him, what's called glean people. Oh my gosh. Hang on, sorry guys. Skip. There we go. That's why we know that's how it's royalty free, right? Oh, okay, we're gonna get through this. We're just gonna leave this here for a second. But basically, Scythe Faraday is training them to become scythe. He's teaching them how to glean. They call it gleaning, not instead of killing. And so yeah, he's teaching them all about that so that they can prepare themselves for their test to become a scythe, which they're going to have to do in front of a bunch of people. And we're going to learn more about that in this part, in these next 100 pages. So I hope you're excited. I'm going to play some music. It's called Epic Music Mix. It's heroes versus villains. So it's music of heroes getting ready to be heroes. So maybe that's going to work for this part. Fingers crossed. Which is kind of like what's happening in the book, right? Rowan and Citra are our heroes, and they are in training to go do heroic things. There we go, right? That's getting us into part 2 of Scythe by Neal Shusterman. Part 2, no laws beyond these. The Scythe Commandments. 1, thou shalt kill. 2, thou shalt kill with no bias, bigotry, or malice, aforethought. 3, so malice aforethought basically means like to do harm, right? Like you're not angry at somebody and going to kill them and plan to kill them because they made you angry. 3, thou shalt grant an annum of immunity to the beloved of those who accept your coming and to anyone else you deem worthy. So annum, I think, means like a year, like annual, of immunity to the beloved of those who accept your coming. So people who like accept the scythe coming into their, to glean them, are welcoming them and like accepting their fate, and their families will get immunity. And then it says, and to anyone you deem worthy. So anyone who seems like a good person or who deserves it. They seem like it deserves it. 4, thou shalt kill the beloved of those who resist. Thou shalt kill the beloved of those who resist. So people who don't accept the scythe's coming, who are like resisting against the scythe, they're trying to fight the scythe from gleaning them, their family will have to die. 2. Yikes. 5, thou shalt serve humanity for the full span of thy days, and thy family shall have immunity as recompense for as long as you live. So a scythe's family will get immunity as long as they continue to be a scythe. 6, thou shalt lead an exemplary life in word and deed, and keep a journal of each and every day. So they have to keep a journal. 7, thou shalt kill no scythe beyond thyself. So scythes can't kill other scythes, but scythes can technically kill themselves. So that's the only way a scythe could die, would be by suicide? Ooh, okay. We're getting into it. This is this book, you guys. This is an intense book. The music is telling us it's intense. So now we know. 8, thou shalt claim no earthly possessions save thy robes, ring, and journal. So main things in a scythe's toolbox are their robe that they have to wear, their ring, which helps them grant immunity, and their journal, which they have to keep a journal of every day. 9, thou shalt have neither spouse nor spawn. So that means scythes can't get married and they can't have kids. Turning this down just a tiny little bit. So it's a lonely life for a scythe, right? They can't really connect with anybody, even other scythes. I'm sure they could be friends, but they couldn't get married. They couldn't be together. It goes against the rules. 10, the last scythe rule, commandment. Thou shalt be beholden to no laws beyond these. So these are the only laws that scythes have to follow, right? They don't have to follow any other law set forth by the Thunderhead or by the community. So that's why they can kind of do what they want. Just to let you know, this page that I just started reading from, is another one of those journal entries. It's formatted differently than the rest of the pages. So this is coming from a journal entry that somebody has copied down the Scythe commandments. Once a year, I fast and ponder the commandments. In truth, I ponder them daily, but once a year, I allow them to be my sole sustenance. There is genius in their simplicity. Before the Thunderhead, governments had constitutions and massive tomes of laws, yet even then, there were forever debated and challenged and manipulated. Wars were fought over the different interpretations of the same doctrine. When I was much more naive, I thought that the simplicity of the Scythe commandments made them impervious to scrutiny. From whatever angle you approach them, they looked the same. Over my many years, I've been both amused and horrified by how malleable and elastic they can be. The things we Scythes attempt to justify, the things that we excuse. In my early days, there were several Scythes still alive who were present when the commandments were formed. Now, none more remain, all having invoked commandment number 7, the one about suicide. I wish I would have asked them how the commandments came about. What led to each one? How did they decide upon the wording? Were there any that were just jettisoned before the final 10 were written in stone? And why number 10? Of all the commandments, number 10 gives me the greatest pause for thought. For to put oneself above all other laws is a fundamental recipe for disaster. From the Gleaning Journal of H.S. Curie. Chapter 6. An Elegy of Scythes. The flight was on time, as usual. While weather couldn't entirely be controlled, it was easily diverted away from airports and out of flight paths. Most airlines boasted 99.9% on-time service. It was full flight, but the lavishly appointed seats of modern air travel, it didn't feel crowded at all. These days, flying was as comfortable as sitting in one's own living room, with the added perk of live entertainment. String quartets and vocal stylists soared across the skies with a cabin full of contented passengers. Air travel these days was far more civilized than in the age of mortality. It was now an exceptionally pleasant way to reach one's destination. Today, however, the passengers of Big Sky Air Flight 922 were on their way to a different destination than the one on which they had planned. The businessman was seated comfortably in 15C, an aisle seat. He always requested that seat not out of superstition, but out of habit. When he didn't get 15C, he was cranky and resentful of whoever did. The company he ran, which was developing hibernation technology, would someday make the longest journeys seem to pass in a matter of minutes. For now, he would be happy with Big Sky Air, as long as he got to seat 15C. Okay, so in this chapter, we're reading a little bit different of a perspective. We're reading from the perspective of, it's still third person omniscient, right? Or third person, yeah, it's third person omniscient. But I guess you could say it could be limited because of the perspective from the businessman, kind of seeing in his little kind of concern about getting seat 15C, it goes from being omniscient, almost goes from being omniscient to a limited perspective, because we go from hearing about the airlines and what it's like to this businessman who's concerned about his seat on the airplane. So we're not reading about Rowan or Citra in this chapter. People were still filing on, taking their seats. He eyed the passengers moving down the aisle with mild disinterest, but only to make sure they didn't hit his shoulder with their purses, carry-ons as they passed. "Are you heading out or heading home?" asked the woman sitting beside him in 15A. There was no 15B. The concept of the B seat, where one had to sit between two other passengers, had been eliminated, along with other unpleasant things like disease and government. Neal Shusterman is really funny. He's really comical with some of these writing lines. I mean, just spot on writing. I think he, for a book that's as like intense and almost kind of depressing as this one is, he sure knows how to bring some levity, I think, to the story a little bit, just through his little comments and writing about that. Out, he told her. And you? Home, she told him with a heavy but relieved sigh. At 5 minutes to departure, a commotion up front caught his attention. A Scythe had entered the plane and was talking to a flight attendant. When a Scythe wants to travel, any seat is fair game. The Scythe could displace a passenger, forcing them to take a different seat or even a different flight if there were no other available seats. More unnerving, however, were tales of Scythes who gleaned the passenger from the seat they took. The businessman could only hope that this particular Scythe didn't have his sights set on seat 15C. The Scythe's robe was unusual. Royal blue, speckled with glittering jewels that appeared to be diamonds. Rather ostentatious for a Scythe. The businessman didn't know what to make of it. The age the Scythe presented was late 30s, although that meant nothing. No one looked their true age anymore. He could have been anywhere from 30-something to 230-something. His hair was dark and well-groomed. His eyes were invasive. The businessman tried not to catch his gaze as the Scythe looked down the aisle into the cabin. Then 3 more Scythes appeared behind the first. They were younger, perhaps in their early 30s. Their robes, each in a different bright color, were also decorated with gems. There was a dark-haired woman in an apple green speckled with emeralds, a man in orange speckled with rubies, and another man in yellow speckled with golden citrines. What was the collective word for a group of Scythes? An elegy, wasn't it? Odd that there'd be a word for something so rare. In his experience, Scythes were also always solitary, never traveling together. A flight attendant greeted the elegy of Scythes, and then the second they were past her, she turned, left the plane, and ran down the jetway. She's escaping, thought the businessman. But then he banished the thought. She couldn't be. She was probably just hurrying to let the gate agent know of the added passengers. That's all. She couldn't be panicking. Flight attendants were trained not to panic. But then the remaining flight attendant closed the door, and the look on her face was anything but reassuring. The passengers began talking to one another, mumbling, a little bit of nervous laughter. Then the lead Scythe addressed the passengers. "Your attention, please," he said with an unnerving smile. "I regret to inform you that this entire flight has been selected for gleaning." The businessman heard it, but his brain told him that he could not have possibly heard correctly. Or maybe this was Scythe humor, if such a thing even existed. This entire flight has been selected for gleaning? That couldn't be possible. It couldn't be allowed. Could it? In a few moments, passengers began to wrap their minds around what the Scythe had said. Then came the gasps, the wails, the whimpers, and finally uncontrolled sobs. The misery could not have been worse had they lost an engine in flight, as planes did back in the mortal days when technology occasionally failed. The businessman was quick, steady, and excelled at split-second decisions in crisis. He knew what he had to do. Perhaps others were thinking the same thing, but he was the one who took action first. He left his seat and hurled himself down the aisle toward the back of the plane. Others followed him, but he was the first to the back door. He quickly scanned its operation, then pulled the red lever and swung the door open into a bright, sunny morning. A jump from his height to the tarmac might have broken a bone or twisted an ankle, but the healing nanites in his blood would quickly release opiates and deaden the pain. He'd be able to escape in spite of any injury. But before he could leap, he heard the lead Scythe say, "I suggest you all return to your seats if you value the lives of your loved ones." It was standard procedures for Scythes to glean the families of those who resist or run from being gleaned. Familial gleaning was a remarkable deterrent, but this was a full plane. If he jumped and ran, how would they know who he was? As if reading his mind, the lead Scythe said, "We have the manifest from this plane. We know the names of everyone on board, including the name of the flight attendant who displayed cowardice unbecoming to her position and left. Her entire family will pay the price, along with her." The businessman slid down to his knees and put his head in his hands. A man behind him pushed past and jumped anyway. He hit the ground and ran, more worried by what was happening in the moment than what might happen tomorrow. Perhaps he had no family he cared about, or perhaps he'd rather they journey with him into oblivion. But as for the businessman, he could not bear the thought of his wife and children gleaned because of him. Gleaning is necessary, he told himself. Everyone knows. Everyone has agreed this is a crucial necessity. Who was he to go against it? It only seemed terrible now that he was on the one lined up in the cold crosshairs of death. Then the lead scythe raised an arm and pointed at him. His fingernails seemed just the slightest bit too long. I don't know about you guys, but long fingernails just kind of, sometimes they gross me out. You know, like I can grow my nails out, but sometimes it's just like, no, you know, especially like, and in this scenario, I think it's extra creepy. It just makes it extra creepy because he's like, creepy, the scythe, right? Not only is he, like commanding and like flanked by 3 other scythes, but he's wearing diamonds in his robes, and like it's royal blue, which kind of looks off for Scythe. I mean, he's already like said a couple of times that this Scythe seems a little different than the rest. So the fact that he's like extra creepy and his nails are long, right? It's creepy. Yeah. The businessman, I think this is really interesting because like you see a couple of different reactions from people. You see the people who run, and of course everybody knows about the commandments, and one of the commandments being, which is it? Number 4, right? Kill the family of the people who resist being gleaned. Like he says, like it's a way, it's a deterrent to stop people who would run away, right? Or who would try to fight off the scythes. Like it's a way to stop them from trying to do that. Or at least try to stop them from doing it. And the businessman himself clearly has some kind of perspective on the matter, because he's like, it's necessary. The only reason why I'm scared now is because it's me. Like I'm the one sitting in the crosshairs of death. So like he's of the mind of like, I know that this is an important thing I have to do, but I don't want to be the one who has to do it. So, you know, he's got this like conscience, especially about his family. The lead scythe raised an arm and pointed at him. His fingernails seemed just the slightest bit too long. You, he said, the bold one, come here. Others in the aisle stepped aside, and the businessman found himself moving forward. He couldn't even feel his legs doing it. It was as if the scythe were pulling him with an invisible string. His presence was that commanding. We should glean him first, said the blonde, brutish scythe with a bright orange robe, wielding what appeared to be a flamethrower. They're gonna burn everybody on the plane with a flamethrower? Jeez. Glean him first to set an example. But the lead scythe shook his head. First of all, put that thing away. We will not play with fire on a plane. Secondly, setting an example presupposes that someone will be left to learn from it. It's pointless when there's no one to set an example for. He lowered his weapon and looked down, chastised. The other 2 scythes remained silent. You were so quick to leave your seat, the lead scythe told the businessman. Clearly, you're the alpha of this plane. And as alpha, I will allow you to choose the order in which these good folks shall be gleaned. You can be the last if you choose, but first you must select the order of the others. So, okay, so we have an example of scythes from Scythe Faraday, right? And a little bit from Scythe Curie, who is the journal entries that we're reading in between the chapters. And like, when you think about the way that Scythe Faraday killed or gleaned his other 2 people that you see, or his, I guess, the people that we saw in part 1, he does it kind of like as a way to bring peace to people, right? Like he does... Cole's is like a shock, which kills him instantly. It's not painful. What's the other one? Oh, we don't know how he killed Citra's neighbor. Do we find out? Does he ever tell her? I don't know. We might find out, but we don't know how he kills Citra's neighbor. But he do know that he gives the woman in the that they find in the parking lot. He gives her a pill that just is like an instant kill. So there's no pain in whatever Scythe Faraday gives, right? Like whenever he does it, he's trying to bring people peace. He's trying to try to be there for them. You know, it's kind of why he picks out Rowan, because Rowan wants to be there for them, right? With this Scythe that we're reading about, right? This is almost cruel, right? To make one of the passengers pick how these other passengers are going to die, like in what order they're going to die, right? And the other Scythe has a flamethrower. He's not going to use it because the kind of lead Scythe tells him not to. But the fact that he has it and brought it intentionally to like use kind of shows that these Scythes may not be like Scythe Faraday. Maybe they have different approach to their job. And then to put this guy in the position of choosing who dies first is also very cruel and unusual. In this scenario, right, to kind of put him in this position of having to choose people to die. Yeah, it's not really good. Come on now, no indecisiveness. You were the decisive enough when you ran to the back of the plane. Bring that formidable will to bear on this moment. Clearly, the Scythe was enjoying this. He shouldn't enjoy it. That's one of the basic precepts of Scythedom. A random part of his mind thought, I should lodge a complaint, which he realized would be very difficult to do if he was dead. He looked to the terrified people around him. Now they were terrified of him. He was the enemy now, too. We're waiting, said the woman in green, impatient to begin. How? The man asked, trying to control his breathing, stalling for time. How will you glean us? The lead Scythe pulled back a fold of his robe to display an entire collection of weapons neatly concealed beneath. Knives of various lengths, guns, other objects that the man didn't even recognize. Our method will be as our mood suits us. Sans incendiary devices, of course. Now please start choosing people so we may begin. We got a new vocab word. As you might have seen, I put the vocab words up on the screen that we learned from last part. Obsequious and sycophant. And so I think I'm going to add our next vocabulary word is incendiary. Incendiary means like able to be what am I trying to say? Able to be lit on fire, incendiary, right? Like it's right, something explosive. Okay, let me add this. Incendiary. Did I spell it right? I-N-C-E-N diary. Perfect. Now here's the question. Is it going to change? Go back. No, it's not going to change. I don't think. Unless I refresh it, maybe? There we go. There we go. Incendiary. Sans means minus as well, right? He uses sans, which is, I think it's French for like without. French? I think French. Sans incendiary devices, of course. Now please start choosing people so we may begin. The female Scythe tightened her grip on the handle of a machete and brushed back her dark hair with her free hand. Did she just actually lick her lips? This would not be a gleaning. It would be a bloodbath, and the businessman realized he wanted no part of it. Yes, his fate was sealed. Nothing would change that. Nothing could change that, which meant he didn't have to play the Scythe's twisted game. Oh no. Sorry, you guys. Suddenly, he found himself sublimating his fear, rising to a place where he could look at the Scythe in his dark eyes, the same deep shade of blue as his robe. No, the man said. I will not choose, and I will not give you the pleasure of watching me squirm. Then he turned to the other passengers. I advise everyone here to end your own lives before these Scythes get their hands on you. They take too much pleasure in it. They don't deserve their rank any more than they deserve the honor of gleaning you. The lead scythe glared at him, but only for a moment. Then he turned to his 3 compatriots. "Begin," he ordered. The others drew weapons and began the awful gleaning. "I am your completion," the lead scythe said loudly to the dying. "I am the last word of your lives well lived. Give thanks, and thus farewell." The lead scythe pulled out his own blade, but the businessman was ready. The moment the blade was drawn, he thrust himself forward onto it, a final willful act, making death his own choice rather than the scythe's, denying the scythe, if not his method, then his madness. That's like the first chapter of part 2. Yeah, we've barely gotten into this part. I don't know if we're going to finish it tonight, but we'll try. We'll try to get there. Okay, next journal entry. In my early years, I wondered why it was so rare to catch a scythe out of his or her robes and in common street clothes. It's a rule in some places, but not in mid-America. Here it is just an accepted practice, although rarely violated. Then, as I settled in, it occurred to me why it must be. For our own peace of mind, we scythes must retain a certain level of separation from the rest of humanity. Even in the privacy of my own home, I find myself wearing only the simple lavender frock that I wear beneath my robes. Some would call this behavior aloof. I suppose on some level it is. But for me, it's more the need to remind myself that I am other. Certainly most uniformed positions allow the wearers to have a separate life. Peace officers and firefighters, for instance, are only partially defined by their job. In the off hours, they wear jeans and t-shirts. They have barbecues for neighbors and coach their children in sports. But to be a scythe means that you are a scythe every hour of every day. It defines you to the core of your being, and only in dreams is one free of the yoke. Yet even in dreams, I often find myself gleaning. From the Gleaning Journal of H.S. Curie. Chapter 7, Killcraft. During your year with me, Scythe Faraday told Rowan and Citra, you will learn the proper way to wield various blades. You will become marksmen in more than a dozen types of firearms. You will have a working knowledge of toxicology, and you will train in the deadliest of martial arts. You will not become masters in these things. That takes many years. But will have the basic skills upon which you will build. Skills that will be useless for the one who you don't choose, Citra pointed out. Nothing we learn is useless, he told her. While the Scythe's house was modest and unadorned, it had one impressive feature, the weapons den. It had once been the garage of the old house, but now was lined with the Scythe's extensive weapons collection. One wall was hung with blades, another firearms, a third wall looked like a pharmacist's shelf, and the fourth wall held more archaic objects, elaborately carved bows, a quiver of obsidian-tipped arrows, frighteningly muscular crossbows, even a mace. Although it was hard for them to imagine Scythe Faraday taking someone out with a mace. Now, I don't know if everybody knows what a mace is, right? A mace, not like the kind you spray in someone's eyes if they're bothering you. A mace is like a sharp tips one of these, right? Except it's bigger. It's like a big handle, and sometimes they'll have two, sometimes they have one on it, right? I mean, I guess some of it could be on a stick, but most of the time it's like a chain and a ball and a spiky ball, and you kind of whip it around like that. It's a medieval weapon. Yeah. For battles on the battlefield, why would you need one today? You wouldn't really want to kill a deer with that, right? You wouldn't really want to go and hunt with that. Be kind of silly. Okay. So yeah, that's on his wall. So maybe it's a collector's piece. Maybe he's a collector of weapons, which, makes sense, right? If you're a scythe, you might as well. The fourth wall was more of a museum, they supposed, but the fact that they weren't sure was unsettling. The daily regimen was rigorous. Rowan and Citra trained with blades and staves, sparring against the Scythe, who was surprisingly strong and limber for a man of his apparent age. They learned to shoot at a special firing range for scythes and apprentices, where weapons that were banned for public use were not only allowed but encouraged. They learned the basics of Black Widow Bakator, a deadly version of the ancient Cambodian martial art developed specifically for the Scythedom. It left them exhausted, but stronger than either of them had ever been. Physical training, however, was only half their regimen. There was an old oak table in the center of the weapons den, clearly a relic from the age of mortality. This is where Scythe Faraday spent several hours a day schooling them in the ways of the scythe. Studies in mental acuity, history, and the chemistry of poisons, as well as daily entries in their apprentice journals. There was more to learn about death than either of them had ever considered. History, chemistry, writing, this is like school, Rowan grumbled to Citra, because he wouldn't dare complain to Scythe Faraday. And then there was the gleaning. Each scythe must perform a quota of 260 gleanings per year, Scythe Faraday told them, which averages to about 5 per week. So you get weekends off, joked Rowan, trying to add a little nervous levity to the discussion. But Faraday was not amused. For him, nothing about gleaning was a laughing matter. On days that I don't glean, I attend funerals and do research for future gleanings. Scythes, or should I say good scythes, don't often have days off. The idea that not all scythes were good was something neither Rowan or Citra had ever considered. It was widely accepted that scythes adhered to the highest moral and ethical standards. There were wise in their dealings and fair in their choices. Even the ones who sought celebrity were even seen to deserve it. The idea that some scythes might not be as honorable as Scythe Faraday did not sit well with either of his new apprentices. Okay, so, they're getting all this information, they're learning about all this stuff, and I think Scythe Faraday's words kind of come back at the end of this little section because he says, nothing we learn is useless, which is absolutely true. Even if Citra or Rowan go back to their lives, their normal lives, right? They're going to have skills that they're going to be able to use for real life that they could use for other people. But most importantly, they're learning about the world of the scythes, right? They're getting a better understanding of what it's like to be a scythe and why it is the way it is in the world. Especially with this idea that's now been planted in their heads by Scythe Faraday, which may be true, since we just read the previous chapter, that not all scythes are good. Certainly the scythe from the previous chapter in the blue robes and the diamonds is not one of the good scythes. Maybe not his people that he's hanging out with either. Maybe they're not good scythes. Maybe that's like a crew of quote-unquote bad scythes. Okay. And we also get a glimpse into Faraday's life, his little routine, 5 gleanings a week, and then he goes to funerals. So he has like a respect for the dead. He has a respect for the people that he gleans, and he does research. So he's like, 24-hour grinding as a scythe. It's not the best lifestyle, clearly, but it's what works for him. The raw shock of gleaning never left Citra. Although Scythe Faraday had not, since that first day, asked them to be the life-taking hand, being an accomplice was difficult enough. Each untimely end came draped in its own shroud of dread, like a reoccurring nightmare that never lost its potency. She had thought she would grow numb, that she would become used to the work, but it didn't happen. It means I chose wisely, Scythe Faraday told her. If you do not cry yourself to sleep on a regular basis, you are not compassionate enough to be a scythe. That's kind of sad, too. She doubted Rowan cried himself to sleep. He was the type of kid who kept his emotions very much to himself. She couldn't read him. He was opaque, and yet it bothered her. Or perhaps he was so transparent she was seeing through him to the other side. She couldn't be sure. They quickly learned that Scythe Faraday was very creative in his gleaning methods. He never repeated the exact same method twice. But there aren't scythes who are ritualistic in their work, Citra asked him, performing each gleaning exactly the same. But aren't there scythes who are ritualistic in their work? Citra asked him, performing each gleaning exactly the same. Yes, but we must each find our own way, he told her. Sorry, I can't get this page to go. Our own code of conduct. I prefer to see each person I glean as an individual deserving of an end that is unique. He outlined for them the 7 basic methods of killcraft. Most common are the 3 B's: blade, bullet, and blunt force. I feel like there would be like a bit more to it than that. Blade, bullet, blunt force. And the next 3 are asphyxiation, poison, and catastrophic induction, such as electrocution or fire. Although I find fire a horrific way to glean and would never use it. The final method is weaponless force, which is why we train you in Bakator. Okay, so Scythe Faraday talks about this fire thing, and I think it's going to come up more than once. I haven't read the rest of the series, so I don't know if this is like a big like point or theme that comes up later in the series, but I do know that it is something that they discuss in the book several times. The use of fire is like not the sides are kind of divided on it, so to speak, right? Some of them think it's kind of horrific, like Scythe Faraday. He's saying it's like kind of not the best method to use for gleaning. But then you've got the previous chapter we just read, one of the Scythes was carrying a flamethrower, so he likes to use fire. But if you think about it, people dying in fire, it's like really isn't a good way to go, you know? Like you're literally burning to death, which has got to be horrifying and painful, you know, as opposed to other ways that a person could die. So I kind of agree with Scythe Faraday. But it does seem to be a point of contention throughout the Scythedom, as it's called in the book. And I feel like it's going to come up later. I feel like there's a reason why it keeps getting mentioned. To be a Scythe, he explained, meant that one had to be well-versed in all methods. Citra realized that being well-versed meant she would have to participate in various types of gleaning. Would he have her pull the trigger, thrust the knife, swing the club? She wanted to believe she wasn't capable of it. She desperately wanted to believe she wasn't Scythe material. It was the first time in her life that she aspired to fail. Rowan's feelings on the matter were mixed. He found that Scythe Faraday's moral imperative and ethical high ground infused Rowan with purpose, but only in the Scythe's presence. When left to his own thoughts, Rowan doubted everything. Burned into his mind was the look on that woman's face as she fearfully yet obediently opened her mouth to be poisoned. The look on her face the moment before she bit down. I am an accomplice to the world's oldest crime, he told himself in his loneliness moments, and it will only get worse. While the journals of Scythes were public record, an apprentice still had the luxury of privacy. Scythe Faraday gave Rowan and Citra pale leather-brown volumes of rough-edged parchment. To Rowan, it looked like a relic from the Dark Ages. He wouldn't have been surprised if Faraday gave them a feather quill to go with it. Mercifully, however, they were allowed to use normal writing utensils. A Scythe's journal is traditionally made of lambskin parchment and kid leather. I assume you mean kid as in goat, Rowan said, and not kid as in kid. That finally made the Scythe laugh. Citra seemed to be annoyed that he had made Scythe Faraday laugh, as if it put him a point ahead of her. Rowan knew that as much as she hated the idea of being a Scythe, she would jockey for position over him because that's how she was hardwired. Competition was in her very nature. She couldn't help herself. Rowan was much better at picking his battles. He can compete when necessary, but rarely got caught up in petty one-upmanship. He wondered if that would give him an advantage over Citra. He wondered if he wanted one. Okay, so I kind of like this chapter because we're just getting into the training of Citra and Rowan, and you kind of see how they're both handling it. And I do think it's really cool how we get this third person, still limited perspective because you're looking at it alternatingly through Citra's point of view and Rowan's point of view. So I think it's technically still third person limited, but it's interesting because you kind of go back and forth between here's Citra's thoughts, here's Rowan's thoughts, here's what's going on with Citra, here's what Rowan thinks. So it kind of keeps it interesting. It kind of keeps it moving. I like it. Being a Scythe. Oh, and before I continue, I'm just gonna take a sip of coffee. Get me through these next 90 pages. 90 pages. We might get through chapter 2. I mean, part 2. We'll try to get through part 2. We might do a part 2, like A and B, just to make sure I'm good on time. because I've got a limited amount of time tonight. And then I'll pick up next week, but I'll go over that at the end of the stream. Okay. Being a Scythe would not have been his life choice. He had not made any life choices yet, so he had no real clue what he would do with his internal future. But now that he was being mentored by a Scythe, he began to feel he might have the mettle to be one. His Scythe Faraday had selected him as morally capable of the job. Perhaps he was. As for the journal, Rowan hated it. In a large family where no one particularly cared to hear his thoughts on anything, he had become accustomed to keeping his thoughts to himself. I don't see what the big deal is, Citra said when they worked in their journals after dinner one evening. No one will ever read it but you. So why write it? Rowan snapped back. Citra sighed as if talking to a child. It's to prepare you for writing an official Scythe's journal. Whichever one of us gets the ring will be legally obligated by Commandment 6 to keep a journal every day of our lives. Which I'm sure no one will read, added Rowan. But people could read it. The Scythe archive is open to everyone. Yeah, said Rowan, like the Thunderhead. People can read anything, but no one does. All they do is play games and watch cat holograms. So true, except I feel like there would still be people who read. I definitely still think that with a population size as big as this one, you're still going to have readers out there, right? You still have readers today, right? It is definitely more fun. Not necessarily true. It is more, gratifying, instant gratification to watch cat videos and play games. But reading is also fun. Reading is also interesting, right? You learn a lot. You experience a lot. Reading is the best, and I love it. And that's why we're here today. Okay, let's keep going. Citra shrugged. All the more reason not to worry about writing one. If it's lost among a gazillion pages, you can write your grocery list and what you ate for breakfast. No one will care. But Rowan cared. If he was going to put pen to paper, if he was going to do what a Scythe does, he would do it right, or not at all. And so far, he looked at his painfully blank page. He was leaning toward not at all. He watched Citra as she wrote, completely absorbed in her journal. From where he sat, he couldn't read what she had written, but he could tell it was in a fine penmanship. It figured she would take penmanship in school. It was one of those classes people took just to be superior, like Latin. He supposed he'd have to learn to write in cursive if he became a Scythe. But right now, he'd stick with the inelegant, sloppy printing. He wondered, had Citra and he been in the same school, would they have gotten along? They probably wouldn't have even known each other. I feel like I need to turn this it's getting a little too epic right now. Maybe we switch over real quick to a different kind of music. Here we go. My favorite music ever. Yeah, perfect. They probably wouldn't have even known each other. She was the type of girl who participates, and Rowan was the kind of kid who avoids. Their circles were about as far from intersecting as Jupiter and Mars in the night sky. Now, however, they had been pulled into convergence. They were not exactly friends. They were never given the opportunity to develop a friendship before being thrust into apprenticeship together. They were partners. They were adversaries. And Rowan found it increasingly hard to parse his feelings about her. All he knew was that he liked watching her write. Rowan and Citra, so cute. It's like Romeo and Juliet, though. They're like doomed. Okay? Like, you read a book like this, you don't even need a prologue to say that they're doomed. Like, they're literally competing with each other to become a person who kills people. Like, ooh, it's doomed. And it's going to get worse. That's not a spoiler. It's called foreshadowing. It's going to get worse. Scythe Faraday was strict on his no family policy. It is ill-advised for you to have contact with your family during your apprenticeship. It was difficult for Citra. She missed her parents, but more than that, she missed her brother Ben, which surprised her because at home she never had much patience for him. Rowan seemed to have no problem with being separated from his family. They'd much rather have their immunity than have me around anyway, he told Citra. Boo-hoo, Citra said. Am I supposed to feel sorry for you? Not at all. envious, maybe. It makes it easier for me to leave it all behind. Scythe Faraday did bend his own rule once, however. About a month in, he allowed Citra to attend her aunt's wedding. While everyone else was dressed in gowns and tuxedos, Scythe Faraday did not allow Citra to dress up, lest you feel yourself a part of that world. It worked. Wearing simple street clothes amid the pageantry made her feel even more the outsider, and the apprentice armband made it worse. Perhaps this was the reason Faraday allowed her to attend, to make crystal clear the distinction between who she had been and who she was now. "So, what's it like?" asked her cousin Amanda. "Gleaning and stuff, is it like gross?" "We're not allowed to talk about it," Citra told her, which was not true, but she had no interest in discussing gleaning like it was school gossip. She should have nurtured that conversation, however, instead of shutting it down, because Amanda was one of the few people who spoke to her. There were plenty of sideways glances and people talking about her when they thought she wasn't watching, but most everyone avoided her like she carried a mortal age disease. Perhaps if she already had her ring, they might try to curry favor in hopes of receiving immunity, but apparently as an apprentice, she offered them nothing but the creeps. Her brother was standoffish, and even speaking to her mother was awkward. She asked standard questions like, "Are you eating?" and "Are you getting enough sleep?" "I understand there's a boy living with you," her father said. "He has his own room and he's not interested in me at all," she told him, which she found oddly embarrassing to admit. Citra sat through the wedding ceremony but excused herself before the reception and took a public car back to Scythe Faraday's house, unable to bear another minute of it. "You're back early," Scythe Faraday commented when she returned, and although he feigned surprise, he had set her place for dinner. This is big, right? Like a character, it's not like she's gone through like a huge change, but she has undertaken a path that she is not going to be able to go back from, right? Here's the thing about this whole apprenticeship thing. And I think they mention this in the book, but even if the other one doesn't win, right? Like the one who loses has to go back to their family. How do you go back after that? How do you go back? How do you pretend like you don't know how to kill how to kill people using the 7 different methods, how do you fake not, how do you'll always have that knowledge. You'll always have that experience with you. And that in and of itself has changed you. And you're kind of on a different level just being in a part of that world. I mean, I wonder, does make me wonder, if they did go back, would her family treat her the same as when they treat her at this wedding? Or would they treat her differently still, just because she had the experience of being a Scythe's apprentice? It does make me wonder. There's a couple of apprentices in this book, not Citra or Rowan, I'm not giving anything away, but they lose their apprenticeship. They can't become an apprentice. It makes you wonder, what do they go back to? What do they end up doing? Because, it seems like everything after this whole experience would just be kind of, boring, Okay, next journal entry. Scythes are supposed to have a keen appreciation of death, yet there are some things that are beyond even our comprehension. The woman I gleaned today asked me the oddest question. "Where do I go now?" she asked. "Well," I explained calmly, "your memories and life recording are already stored in the Thunderhead, so it won't be lost. Your body is returned to the earth in a manner determined by your next of kin." "Yes, I know all of that," she said, "but what about me?" The question perplexed me. As I said, your memory construct will exist in the Thunderhead. Loved ones will be able to talk to it, and your construct will respond. "Yes," she said, getting a bit agitated, "but what about me?" I gleaned her then. Only after she was gone did I say, "I don't know." From the Gleaning Journal of H.S. Curie. Chapter 8, A Matter of Choice. I don't know if I read the titles of the other chapter. I feel like I did. Maybe? I hope I did. Yeah, I did. Okay. I read those 2 chapter titles. Okay. Chapter 8, A Matter of Choice. "I will glean alone today," Scythe Faraday told Rowan and Citra one day in February, the 2nd month of their apprenticeship. So they started in January, so they have a full year to train. And so that's easy. Start in January. So they've been in training for about a month and a half, because they're in their second month. While I'm gone, I have a task for each of you. He took Citra into the weapons den. You, Citra, shall polish each of my blades. She had been in the weapons den nearly every day for lessons, but to be there alone, nothing but her and the instruments of death was entirely different. The scythe went to the blade wall, which had everything from swords to switchblades. Some are merely dusty, others tarnished. You shall decide what type of care each one needs. She watched the way his eyes moved from one blade to the other, lingering long enough, perhaps, to recall a memory. You've used them all? She asked. Only about half of them. And even then, for only one gleaning. He reached up and pulled a rapier from the fourth wall, the one with the older-looking weapons. This one looked like one of the three musketeers. Sorry, I had a hard time reading that sentence. He reached up and pulled a rapier from the fourth wall, the one with the older-looking weapons. This one looked like the kind one of the three musketeers might have used. When I was young, I had much more of a flair for drama. I went to glean a man who fancied himself a fencer, so I challenged him to a duel. And you won? I mean, yeah, Citra. Like, hello? No. Wait a minute. I lost. Twice. He skewered me through the neck the first time and tore open my femoral artery the second. He was very good. Each time, after I woke up in the revival center, I returned to challenge him. His wins brought him time, but he was chosen to be gleaned, and I would not relent. Some sides will change their minds, but that leads to compromise, and it favors the persuasive. I make my decisions firm. In the fourth bout, I pierced his heart with the tip of my blade. As he breathed his last, he thanked me for allowing him to die fighting. It was the only time in all my years as a scythe that I had been thanked for what I do. He sighed and put their rapier back in what Citra realized was a place of honor. If you have all these weapons, why did you take our knife that day you came to glean my neighbor? Citra had to ask. The scythe grinned. To gauge your reaction. I threw it away, she told him. I suspected as much, he said, but these you will polish. Then he left her there. When he was gone, Citra studied the weapons. She was not particularly morbid, but she found herself wanting to know which blades had been used and how. It seemed to her that a noble weapon deserved to have its story passed down. And if not to her and Rowan, then to whom? She pulled a scimitar from the wall. A scimitar. You know, it took me a long time to realize what a scimitar is. But a scimitar is the swords they use in Aladdin. Scimitar. That's the best way I can describe it. It's a sword they use in Aladdin. It's the curved blade that gets like fatter toward the end, right? Almost like, I don't know how you describe it. It just has like that weird curve, and it's like thicker at the end than it is at the bottom. Yeah, scimitar. They're pretty cool swords, but I feel like it would be really weird to try and kill somebody with it. Just because it's such a big blade. But yeah, that's when I when I finally realized that's what a scimitar, like what it was called, sword they use in Aladdin. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I can picture that now. Okay, she pulls a scimitar from the wall, a heavy beast that could decapitate you with one single swing. Had Scythe Faraday used it for a beheading? It was, in a way, his style. Swift, painless, efficient. Very true. Hello. Hi. Hello. Hey, Kaden. Hey, Jonathan. Welcome in. Have you guys done your summer reading project yet? Of course, that's what I'm asking. I hope you guys are working on it, or at least completed it for 8th grade. Hope your summer's going well. Thank you for stopping in. Thank you guys. Thank you for coming to my stream. I hope you all are enjoying your summer and getting some rest, right? Not spending all your day doing your summer reading project, but also like doing fun things. I'm not done. Okay, well, you still have time, right? It's only July 8th. It's only July 8th. We got a whole month. You'll be fine. If you do work best at the last minute, then you'll be fine. I don't do work well at the last minute though, so that's just me. Glad you guys are doing well. All right, I am reading Scythe. This is 8th grade honors. So maybe by either of you picked this one to read. It's really good. If you haven't, I don't know how far you guys have gotten yet, but it's so good. I've read the whole thing already. I'm just rereading it for stream, but it's so much fun. Love this book. It's dark though. Just be warned. There's killing in it. It's like the whole point of the book, that people die. So right now we're just in the middle of reading about Rowan and Citra, who are the two main characters. And Citra's been given the task to clean a bunch of blades. My sister said she loved it. Yeah, it's a good book. It's good. Highly recommend it. Couple minutes a night, you got it done, no problem. It is a longer book though. It is one of the longer ones. I think it's like 300 something pages. 400. 434. So it's a long one. Okay, where did I leave off? As she moved it clumsily through the air, she wondered if she had the strength to behead someone. Ugh, I don't know if I would. My God, what am I becoming? She put the weapon on the table, grabbed the rag, and rubbed polish on it. And when she finished, she went to the next and the next, trying not to see her reflection in each of the gleaming blades. Hi, Cora. Hi, how are you? I see you on YouTube and on Instagram. I'm doing well. So Cora's World is a YouTube channel. I highly recommend everyone go check it out and subscribe. She's a former student of mine. And currently killing it right now on TikTok and YouTube. So check her out. Hope you've been well. How's your summer been? Hope your summer's been well. Enjoying your time off is always good. Thanks for stopping by. Good to see you. I think we're moving on to Rowan next. So Scythe Faraday's leaving. Sorry, I'm reading this book. It's really good. And the two main characters are given tasks by their mentor, their Scythe mentor, while he's gone away. So we're moving on to Rowan next, whatever his task is. Good to see you. Glad you came in. Thank you. Rowan's task was not as visceral, but was even more troubling. Today you shall lay the groundwork for my next gleaning, Scythe Faraday told him. Gleaning, by the way, is killing in this book. So it's like the whole point of the book is that seriously, it's so good. I highly recommend you check it out. It's a long book, but it's a good book. It's a really good book. It was assigned to my 7th graders last year to read for their 8th grade reading project next year. So that's why we're reading it on stream. Okay, so Rowan's going to be researching the next killing that Scythe Faraday has to complete. Scythe Faraday told him, then gave him a list of parameters that tomorrow's subject should have. All the information you need is in the Thunderhead, if you're clever enough to find it. Then he left for the day's gleaning. Rowan almost made the mistake of giving the list of parameters to the Thunderhead and asking it for a subject, until he remembered that asking the Thunderhead for assistance was strictly forbidden for scythes. The Thunderhead, just to catch everybody up, the Thunderhead is the AI of the world that makes all the decisions for the people so that they can live their lives without worrying about dying or starving to death or all that horrible things. But the scythes are different, right? Because they basically get to choose who lives and who dies in this world. And so the Thunderhead decided that it wasn't going to do that. It wasn't going to make that decision. So it left it up to human beings to decide who lives and who dies. So it's really intense. It's a really intense book, but it's really good. It's got a lot of really good stuff. And we're discussing it. We're having a good time. Okay, the Thunderhead versus it was strictly forbidden for Scythes. They had full access to the Great Cloud's wealth of information, but could not access its algorithmic conscious mind. Scythe Faraday had told them of a Scythe who tried to do so. The Thunderhead itself reported him to the High Blade, and he was severely disciplined. How is a Scythe disciplined? Rowan had asked. He was put to death 12-fold by a jury of Scythes, then revived each time. After the 12th revival, he was on probation for a year. So in this world, if you die, like accidentally, like if you fall from a great height, or you just accidentally die from something, you can get revived in this world. Like you don't die permanently unless you're killed by one of the Scythes. So a Scythe who didn't choose his own gleaning victims, I don't know what you call them, gleaning people he's going to glean, he used the Thunderhead. The Thunderhead says that's not allowed, and basically he was severely punished, which meant he had to die 12 times and then be brought back each time, and then live probation for a year. It's so good. It's so good. I mean, like, it's intense, but it's good. Rowan imagined a jury of Scythes would be very creative in their methods of punishment. He suspected that dying 12 times at the hands of Scythes would be a lot worse than splatting. He began to enter search parameters. He was instructed to have his search include not just their city, but all of Mid-America, which stretched nearly 1,000 miles across the middle of the continent. Then he narrowed the search to towns with populations under 10,000 that were also on the banks of rivers, then to homes or apartments that were within 100 feet of the riverbank. Then he searched for people 20 and older who lived in those residences. Is there... yeah. So we read the first part earlier this week, and we were just looking at the two main characters, the two protagonists, Rowan and Citra. In the first chapter of this part that we just started reading, there's a chapter that describes a Scythe who is cruel, he's bad, he's like doing things that are really questionable for a Scythe to be doing, like asking, like taking a whole plane of people and killing them, and then asking a passenger to choose who dies first on the plane. It's just very unethical, like very like really creepy, and he seems to like enjoy killing people. And we haven't learned his name yet. We just read that first chapter of this part, and I know that he's going to come back in the book as we continue on, because Citra and Rowan are going to they're going to meet more Scythes, because their main Scythe that they know is the one that they're working for, but they're going to meet more as the book goes on. He's, suspiciously, like, he's doing his job, which is killing people. He's allowed to, but he seems to like it, which you're really not supposed to like killing people. That's, I think it goes without saying, right? You shouldn't really like killing people, and he seems to like it. So it seems like he's not the best guy to be doing this job, because he likes it so much, and so he takes pleasure in killing people. Okay, so Rowan is searching for Scythe Faraday's next gleaning victim, and he's searching for people around water. So in previous chapters, we learned that Scythe Faraday has a very specific way of choosing people who die. Like, they have to be, like, fit a certain profile for certain things, like statistically. So he's trying to find like a vast variety of people that could die. Yes, it may have turned him into a psychopath, or he may have been a psychopath before he got the job. And we're going to see a change like that in this book. You do see a change like that. So some of the characters, the job does affect them differently, right? Hi, not on scruff. Hi, welcome. So yeah, it could be the job that's affecting him. It could just be that's the way he was before he got the job. And so he's just like super into it now. But there are a lot of things that the characters are affected by in this book, especially the young characters, because the book, it is a YA book. It's a young adult book, you know? So it's got teens as the protagonist, right? So they're young people that are having to experience these things and learn about these things, which can be like a very formative time, you know, like an influential time. Okay, so he searched for people 20 and older who lived in those residents. That gave him more than 40,000 people. He had done that in 5 minutes. The next few requirements were not going to be as easy to nail down. The subject must be a strong swimmer. He got a list of every high school and university in each river town and cross-referenced everyone who had been on a swim team for the past 20 years or had registered for a triathlon. About 800 people. The subject must be a dog lover. Use Scythe Faraday's access code. He found the subscription lists of every publication and blog dealing with dogs. He accessed pet store databases to get a list of anyone who made regular purchases of dog food over the past few years. That brought the number down to 112 names. A subject must have a history of heroism in a non-professional capacity. He painstakingly searched for words like hero, bravery, and rescue for all 112 names. He thought he'd be lucky if a single one came up. But to his surprise, 4 of them were noted as having done something heroic at some point in their lives. He clicked on each name and brought up 4 pictures. He immediately regretted it, because the moment those names had faces, they became people instead of parameters. A man with a round face and a winning smile, a woman who could have been anyone's mother, a guy with a bad case of bed hair, a man who looked like he hadn't shaved in 3 days. 4 people, and Rowan was about to decide which one would die tomorrow. Yeah, so this is a tough job, right? He's hoping that only one person is going to show up under these parameters, but he has to choose from 4. So, okay, we've got a man with a round face and winning smile, right? So he's like happy-go-lucky dude, probably super nice. We got a woman who could have been anyone's mother, right? Obviously, she's got to be super nice and she looks like a mom. A guy with a bad case of bed hair. I feel like Rowan's going to pick him just because he has bad hair, but then you're like, oh, that's the reason why you died is because you had bad hair. Yeah, you too, Cora. Good luck with everything. Make sure you subscribe to Cora's World. Everybody have a wonderful summer. Bye, Cora. Thanks for stopping by. Thank you. And the last guy is a man who looked like he hadn't shaved in 3 days. So you got 2 people who seem to be like positive in Rowan's eyes, and then you got 2 people who seem maybe not so positive. And Rowan is about to go through an internal conflict, a literal internal conflict, about who to pick, who to decide to kill. He immediately found himself leaning toward the unshaven man. See, what did I tell you? But realized he was showing bias. Bias. That's another word. Nice job, Cora. See, it works. It works. We'll have to collab sometime. And then both of our subscriber counts will go up. Have a great night. I'll see you. I'll talk to you soon. Best of luck, Cora. Thanks for stopping by. That's awesome. A person shouldn't be discriminated against because he hadn't shaved for a picture. And was he ruling out the woman just because she was a woman? Yeah. So 3 men, 1 woman. He doesn't want to pick the woman. Like any choice you pick is going to be, hard because like you have to do it. I feel like you'd have to do it randomly to not show any bias. Because if you don't pick the woman because she's a woman, that's still showing bias. If you do pick the woman to avoid your bias, then it seems like you're showing bias anyway. So I feel like if the best thing to do would be like roll a dice or pick a number 1 through 4 or something like that. Or flip a coin even. Okay then, the guy with the smile. But Rowan was overcompensating now by choosing the most pleasant looking of them. He decided to learn more about each of them, using Faraday's access code to dig up more personal information than he really should have been allowed to. But this was a person's life he was dealing with. Shouldn't he use any means necessary to make his decision fair? This one had to run into a burning building in his youth to save a family member. But this one has 3 young kids. But this one volunteers at an animal shelter. But this one's brother was gleaned just 2 years ago. He thought each fact would help him, but the more he came to know about each of them, the harder the decision became. He kept digging into their lives, getting more and more desperate until the front door opened and Scythe Faraday returned. It was dark out. When had night fallen? Hi, Ben. Hi. I hope you had a good summer. Good to see you. I'm having a great summer. I'm reading books. I hope you're doing your summer reading project, because that's really important. Don't forget to read your summer reading project book. We're just in the middle of Scythe by Neal Shusterman, reading about Rowan right now in this particular section, and he's having to pick somebody to kill, somebody to die, which is obviously really difficult. I hope so, Ben. You still got time. You got like a whole month left. So enjoy your time. Have fun. If any of you are traveling, I hope you safe travels. Be very safe out there. I'm going to be traveling at the end of this month, so in a car, but still. Okay. So Scythe Faraday's just returned. He's going to ask Rowan if he's decided on a subject for him to kill. The Scythe looked weary, and his robes were splattered with blood. Today's gleaning was more troublesome than expected, he said. Citra came out of the weapons den. All the blades are now polished to a perfect shine, she announced. Faraday gave her his nod of approval. Then he turned to Rowan, who still sat at the computer. And who do we glean next? I narrowed it down to 4. And, said the Scythe, all 4 fit the profile. And, said the Scythe again, well, this one just got married, and this one just bought a house. Pick one, said the Scythe. And this one received a humanitarian award last year. Pick one, yelled the Scythe with a ferocity Rowan had never heard from the man. Their very walls seemed to recoil from his voice. Rowan thought he might get a surprise, as he had when Faraday asked him to hand the woman a cyanide pill. But no. Today's test was very different. Rowan looked to Citra, who still stood in the doorway of the weapons den, frozen like a bystander at an accident. He was truly alone in this awful decision. Rowan looked to the screen, grimacing, and pointed to the man with bed hair. Him, Rowan said. Glean him. Rowan closed his eyes. He had just condemned a man to death because he had a bad hair day. I'm pretty sure I said that earlier. I didn't remember that, by the way. I did not remember that from reading this book earlier. It's been like several months since I read this book last, so I can't remember if I just stuck in my brain. But yeah, he killed the guy. He decided the guy with bed hair. Then he felt Faraday put a firm hand on his shoulder. He thought he'd get a reprimand, but instead the Scythe said, well done. Rowan opened his eyes. Thank you, sir. Were this not the hardest thing you've ever done, I'd be concerned. Does it ever get easier? Rowan asked. I certainly hope not, the Scythe said. Okay, we're moving on. So in that section, right, Citra and Rowan got completely different, jobs. I feel like Rowan's job was way harder than Citra's job, but maybe Citra will have a hard job in the future. Maybe her job is going to be, even worse. Maybe she's going to have to be the first person to glean. The following afternoon, Bradford Ziller returned from work to find a Scythe sitting in his living room. The Scythe stood up as Bradford entered. His instincts told him to turn and run, but before he did, a teenage boy with a green armband, who had been standing off to the side, closed the door behind him. He waited with increasing dread for the Scythe to speak, but instead the Scythe gestured to the boy, who cleared his throat, and said, Mr. Ziller, you've been chosen for gleaning. Tell him the rest, Rowan, said the Scythe patiently. I meant to say that I chose you for gleaning. Yeah. Bradford looked between the two of them, suddenly deeply relieved, because this was clearly some sort of joke. Okay, who the hell are you? Who put you up to this? Then the Scythe held up his hand, showing his ring, and Bradford's spirits fell again, like the second drop of a roller coaster. That was no fake. It was the real thing. The boy is one of my apprentices, the Scythe said. I'm sorry, said the boy. It's not personable. You just fit the profile. Back in the age of mortality, lots of people died trying to perform rescues. A lot of them were people who jumped into flooded rivers to save their pets. Most of them were good swimmers, but that doesn't matter in a flood. The dogs, thought Bradford. That's right, the dogs. You can't hurt me, he said. You do, and my dogs will rip you to pieces. But where were they? Then a girl came out of his bedroom wearing the same armband as the boy. I sedated all three, she said. They'll be fine, but they won't be bothering anyone. There was blood on her arm. Not the dog's, but her own. They had bitten her. Good for them. It's not personal, the boy said again. I'm sorry. One apology is enough, the Scythe told the boy, especially when it's genuine. Bradford guffawed, even though he knew this was real. He just somehow found this funny. His knees weak, he settled into the sofa, and his laughter resolved into misery. How is this fair? How is any of this fair? And then the boy knelt down before him, and when Bradford looked up, he was caught by the boy's gaze. It was as if he were looking into the eyes of a much older soul. Listen to me, Mr. Ziller, the boy said. I know you saved your sister from a fire when you were my age. I know how hard you struggled to save your marriage, and I know you think that your daughter doesn't love you, but she does. Bradford stared at him, incredulous. How do you know all this? The boy pursed his lips. It's our job to know. Your gleaning won't change any of that. You lived a good life. Scythe Faraday is here to complete it for you. Bradford begged to make a phone call, pleaded for just one more day, but of course, those things were not granted. They say he could write a note, but he couldn't bring himself to find anything to write. I know how it feels, the boy told him. How will you do it? He finally asked them. The Scythe responded. I have chosen for you a traditional drowning. We shall take you to the river. I shall submerge you until your life leaves you. Bradford clenched his eyes. I've heard that drowning is a bad way to go. Can I give him some of the stuff I gave the dogs? The girl asked. Knocked him out so that he'll really already be unconscious? The Scythe considered it and nodded. If you choose, we can spare you the suffering. But Bradford shook his head, realizing he wanted every second he had left. No, I want to be awake. If drowning was to be his last experience, then let him experience it. He could feel his heart beating faster, his body trembling with a surge of adrenaline. He was afraid, but fear meant he was still alive. Come then, the Scythe told him gently. We'll all go down to the river together. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of in between on that one. I feel like, yeah, I would have maybe wanted to be knocked out. But at the same time, he's right? Being awake for your very last second of life, because it's the last second you have, but still, drowning. That's rough. That's different than all the other deaths that he's done so far in this book. Citra was awed by how Rowan handled himself. Although he began a little shaky when he first spoke to the man, he took charge. He took the reins. Obviously, I don't know what it's like to drown, but I do hear that it is not pleasant. Obviously, you're incapable of breathing underwater. I wouldn't want to be alive while being drowned. It's kind of a funny thing to say. I wouldn't want to be alive. You mean like awake, I think is what you mean. You wouldn't want to be awake while you're being drowned. Probably does make it less painful. But, yeah. Okay. He took the reins of that man's fear and gave him peace. Citra only hoped that when it came her turn to make a choice, she could keep her composure as well as Rowan had. All she had done today was tranquilize a few dogs. Sure, she got bitten in the process, but it was nothing, really. She tried to convince Faraday to take the dogs to a shelter, but he wouldn't have it. He did allow her to call the shelter to come for the dogs, and the coroner to come for the man. The Scythe offered to take her to a hospital for some speed healing of the dog bite on her arm, but she declined. Her own nanites would heal it by morning, and besides, there was something compelling about the discomfort. She owed it to the dead man to hurt a little for him. That was impressive, she told Rowan on the long ride home. Yeah, right until I puked on the riverbank. But that was only after he was gleaned, Citra pointed out. You gave that man strength to face death. Rowan shrugged, I guess. Citra found it both maddening and endearing how modest he could be. Citra and Rowan love each other. They're not supposed to love each other, but they have to, right? God, there's so much tension between them. This is not a romance book, but it's like, feels like it is. Not gonna lie. Okay, we're in the next journal entry. If you've been reading this book, you know there are journal entries between the chapters. And this is the next journal entry. How far do we have to go, by the way? What time is it? Let me just check my time here real quick. Okay, we have still 70 pages to go in this part. So I don't think we're going to get through all of this part today, although I really want to. I'll have to split it up into another part. But this part is particularly long. There's a poem by Honorable Scythe Socrates, one of the first Scythes. He wrote many poems, but this one has grown to be my personal favorite. Have not a hand in the blade with abandon. Cull from the fold all the brazen and bold, for a dog who just might love the bark and the bite is a carrion raven, the craven of old. It reminds me that in spite of our lofty ideals and the many safety guards to protect the Scythedom from corruption and depravity, we must always be vigilant because power comes infected with the only disease left to us, the virus called human nature. I fear for us all as Scythes begin to love what they do. So at the beginning of this part, we saw a Scythe who kind of enjoyed killing. And here in this journal entry by Scythe Curie, she's saying, she's like, I hope we don't ever get to a point where there are Scythes who like to do it, because that means like they're corrupted, right? Or they're doing it for pleasure, which is not really what they should be doing. Also in this journal entry, we see the poem. Now, okay, here's this first hint, right? I feel like this is the first connecting the dots moment in this book, because I think it's the coroner who is friends with Scythe Faraday in part 1. She says a line from this poem: have not a hand in the blade with abandon. Have not a hand in the blade with abandon. And Curie mentions it in her journal entry. So I feel like that's a connection, right? Between Faraday, the coroner, and Curie. That's already just like one connection. Yeah. So that's a little bit of foreshadowing, I feel like, just to keep that in mind, because that's kind of important. So I think, yeah, if you've already read ahead, then you know about Scythe Curie, but yeah, that's a connection. Piece of foreshadowing to remember, keep in the back of our brains. Okay, chapter 9, Esme. Esme ate far too much pizza. Her mother told her pizza would be the death of her. She never imagined it might actually be true. Oh, something else that I think it's important to note is that in the first part, we got a lot of like Rowan and Citra chapters, like third person limited from their perspective. And yeah, it's intriguing. And in this part, we're getting a lot more chapters that are from a different character's perspective, specifically characters who are gleaned, right? At the beginning of the chapter, or beginning of the part, we had the businessman who gets gleaned on the airplane, his perspective. We get Bradford's perspective when he gets gleaned by Scythe Faraday, and Rowan is there to talk to him about it. And then now we're getting another new character told from her perspective, and her name is the title of the chapter. So she seems like she is very significant, because the other two people whose perspective we saw were not, their name wasn't the title of the chapter, and they were gleaned. So Esme seems like she's going to be a little bit different. The Scythe attack came less than a minute after she was given her slice, piping hot from the oven. It was the end of the school day, and the daily trials of 4th grade had exhausted her. Lunch had sucked. The tuna salad her mother had given her was warm and mildly fermented by the time lunch rolled around. Not exactly appetizing. In fact, none of the food her mother packed for her hit high on the flavor scale. She was trying to get Esme to eat healthier because Esme had a bit of a weight problem. And although her nanites could be programmed to speed up her metabolism, her mother wouldn't hear of it. She claimed it would be treating the symptom, not the problem. Sounds awful. Esme's mom sounds like really mean. You can't solve everything by tweaking your nanites, her mother told her. You need to learn self-control. Actually, no, right? That's like the whole point of the world, is that your nanites control everything and you could live a perfect life if you want to. That's like literally the whole point. I feel bad for Esme. I already sympathize for her. Well, she could learn self-control tomorrow. Good for you, Esme. Today, she wanted pizza. Her favorite pizza place, Luigi's, was in the food court of the Fulcrum City Galleria, which is on her way home from school, sort of. She was negotiating the cheese, trying to figure out how to take that first bite without burning the roof of her mouth when the Scythes arrived. Her back was to them, so she didn't see them at first, but she heard them, or at least one of them. "Good afternoon, good people," he said. "Your lives are about to change in a fundamental way." Esme turned to see them, 4 of them. They were clad in bright robes that glittered. They looked like no one Esme had ever seen. She had never met a Scythe. She was fascinated, until 3 of them pulled out weapons that glistened even more than their bejeweled robes. And the 4th pulled out a flamethrower. Okay, so this is the 4 Scythes from the beginning of the part that gleaned everybody on the airplane. So these are the same 4 Scythes. And I talked about this earlier. These are the Scythes that are not good. They're the kind of evil ones. "This food court has been selected for gleaning," the leader said, and they began their terrible mission. Esme knew what she had to do. Forgetting her pizza, she dropped beneath the table and crawled away. But she wasn't the only one. It seemed everyone had dropped and was scrambling on the floor. It didn't seem to faze the Scythes. She could see their feet through the crawling crowd. The fact that there were victims were on all 4s did not slow them down in the least. Now, Esme began to panic. She had heard stories of Scythes who did mass gleanings, but until now she thought they were nothing but stories. Before her, she could see the robes of the Scythes in yellow. So she doubled back, only to find the Scythe in green closing in. Esme crawled through the gap in the tables and between 2 potted palms that the Scythe in orange had set on fire. And when she emerged on the other side of the large pots, she found herself with no cover. She was at the food concessions now. The man who had served her pizza was slumped over the counter, dead. There was a gap between a trash can and the wall. She was not a slim girl, so she thought the skinniest thoughts she could and squeezed her way into the gap. It was not much of a hiding place, but if she left it, she would be right in the line of fire. She had already seen 2 people trying to dart across the walkway, and both were taken down by a steel crossbow arrows. She didn't dare move, so instead she buried her face in her hands. She stayed that way, sobbing, listening to the terrible sounds around her, until silence fell. She refused to open her eyes until she heard a man say, "Hello there." Esme opened her eyes to see the lead Scythe, the one in blue, standing over her. "Please," she begged, "please don't glean me." The man held out his hand to her. "The gleaning is over," he said. "There's no one left but you. Now, take my hand." Afraid to refuse, Esme reached out and placed her hand in his and rose from her hiding place. "I've been looking for you, Esme," he said. Esme gasped when she heard him say her name. Why would a Scythe be looking for her? The other 3 Scythes gathered around. None of them raised a weapon at her. "You'll be coming with us now," the Scythe in blue said. But my mother." "Your mother knows. I've granted her immunity." "Really?" "Yes, really." Then the girl Scythe in emerald green handed Esme a plate. "I believe this was your pizza." Esme took it. It was cool enough to eat now. "Thank you." "Come with us," said the Scythe in blue, "and I promise you from this moment on your life will be everything you've ever dreamed it could be." And so Esme left with the 4 Scythes, thankful to be alive and trying not to think of the many around her who weren't. This was certainly not the way she imagined her day would go, but who was she to fight against something that rang so clearly of destiny? Added to the squad. Yes, Esme, the 4th grader. So I totally think that, right? Like, it seems like this Scythe has picked his next apprentice the same way that Faraday picked his 2 apprentices. So Esme may be joining the Scythes. Maybe she's going to become one. Maybe she's going to train up to become one. I feel like she's kind of young to be doing that. She's like in 4th grade, but maybe that's how he gets them, right? Maybe he takes them in early, does a little brainwashing, right? And turns them into the Scythe that he wants them to be. That's just my thought. That's just my first thought when I read this, was that he picked her, to add to the squad, TJ. Exactly. Okay, yeah, so Esme's different, totally different. That's a different chapter completely. She's going to come back. We're going to circle back to Esme again. But next, we have another journal entry. Was there ever a time when people weren't plagued with boredom? a time when motivation wasn't so hard to come by. When I look at the news archives from the age of mortality, it seems people had more reasons to do the things they did. Life was about foraging time, not just passing time. And those news reports, how exciting they were, filled with all nature of criminal activity. Your neighbor could be a salesperson of illegal chemicals, of recreation. Ordinary people would take life without the permission of society. Angry individuals would take, that's what I just said. Angry individuals would take possession of vehicles they didn't own, then lead law enforcement officers in dangerous pursuits on uncontrolled roadways. We do have the unsavories nowadays, but they do little more than drop occasional pieces of litter and move shop items to places they don't belong. No one rages against the system anymore. At most, they just glare at it a bit. So the unsavories are mentioned in the first part of this book, and Scythe, Faraday, Citra, and Rowan have an experience with them where the unsavory kisses Faraday's ring and gets immunity for a whole year, like without the Scythe giving it to him, like unconsensually, non-consensually. And he's like, oh, I got immunity. And then the Scythe is like, well, I'm going to come for you on the last day, like on the day that your immunity expires. And so that freaks the kid out enough that he's like, oh, I'm scared. But the unsavories are kind of like the criminals of this world. But they're not really like that bad of criminals because they're just like doing kind of things that are like mildly annoying. They're not doing anything like really real crime. They're just like, okay, littering, you know, or moving things where they shouldn't be. You know, it's just kind of mildly annoying stuff. Okay, perhaps this is why the Thunderheads still allow a measured amount of economic inequality. It could certainly make sure that everyone had equal wealth, but that would just add to the plague of boredom that afflicts the immortal. Although we have what we need, we're still allowed to strive for the things we want. Of course, no one strives like they did in mortal days, when the inequality was so great people would actually steal from one another, sometimes ending lives in the process. I wouldn't want to the return of crime, but I do tire of we Scythes being the sole purveyors of fear. It would be nice to have competition. From the Gleaning Journal of H.S. Curie. Okay, that's chapter 10. We're almost 2 hours in. How many more pages do I have to go? Page am I on? Yeah. We're looking at 70 pages, but we got through about 40 pages today. Hey, Matthew. Hey, welcome in. Welcome in. I think I'm going to do one more chapter and one more journal entry, and then we're going to call it for this part, and we're going to come back to part 2 next week. Welcome in. We're reading Scythe by Neal Shusterman, one of the summer reading books. I hope you're doing your summer reading project, or at least getting part of the way through it before August comes around. Welcome in. Thank you for joining us. All right, chapter 10, Forbidden Responses. Dude, I'm telling you, it's all anyone can talk about. Everyone thinks you're becoming a Scythe to take revenge on the school. On a mild day in March, on one of the rare afternoons that Scythe Faraday allowed Rowan downtime, Rowan had gone to visit his friend Tiger, who had not splatted once in the past 3 months. Now they shot hoops at a park just a few blocks away from Rowan's home, where he wasn't allowed to visit, and might not even if he were allowed. Rowan threw Tiger the ball. That's not why I accepted the apprenticeship. Tiger, by the way, is from the first part, and his hobby was jumping off tall buildings, without a parachute, so he could hit the ground and die. But he was like, they called it dead-ish, right? They call it dead-ish. So he would get revived at a revival center, and he did it just for like funsies, because he's that kind of weirdo. So this is Rowan's friend Tiger, who's just kind of a little crazy. That's not why I accepted the apprenticeship. I know that, and you know that, but people will believe whatever they want to believe, he grinned. Suddenly, I got all sorts of game because I'm your friend. They think I can get them access to your ring, immunity talks, death walks. The thought of Tiger playing intercessor on his behalf almost made Rowan laugh. He could see Tiger milking that for all it was worth, probably charging people for the service. Rowan stole the ball and took a shot. He hadn't played since before moving in with the Scythe, But he found his arm, if not his aim. He was stronger than ever. He had endless stamina, all thanks to his Bakator training. So when you get your ring, you are going to give me immunity, right? Tiger took a shot and missed. It was clearly intentional. He was letting Rowan win. First of all, I don't know that he'll choose me to get the ring. And secondly, I can't give you immunity. Tiger looked genuinely shocked. What? Why not? That's playing favorites. Isn't that what friends are for? A few other kids came into the court and asked if maybe they wanted to play a pickup game. But the second they saw Rowan's armband, they had a change of heart. No worries, the oldest one said. It's all yours. It was exasperating. No, we can all play. No, we gotta go somewhere else. I said we can all play, Rowan insisted. And he saw such fear in the other kid's eyes, he felt ashamed for pushing. Yeah, sure, said the other kid. He turned to his friends. You heard the man. Play. They took to the court in earnest, and in earnest played to lose, just as Tiger had. Was this how it would always be? Was he now such an intimidating presence that even his own friends would be afraid to truly challenge him? The only one who ever challenged him in any way now was Citra. Rowan quickly lost interest in the game and left with Tiger, who found it all amusing. Dude, you're not lettuce anymore. You're deadly nightshade. You're the mean greens now. Tiger was right. If Rowan had told those other kids to get down on all fours and lick the pavement, they would have. It was heady and horrible, and he didn't want to think about it. Rowan didn't know what possessed him to do what he did. Next, frustration at his isolation maybe, or maybe just wanting to bring a sliver of his old life into his new one. Want to come over and see the Scythe's place? Tiger was a little dubious. Will he mind? He's not there, Rowan told him. He's gleaning in another city today. He won't be home until late. He knew that Scythe Faraday would blow a brainstem if he found out Rowan had someone over. It made the desire to do it even more enticing. He had been so good, so obedient. It was about time he did something he wanted to do. When they arrived, the house was empty. Citra, who also was granted a free afternoon by Scythe Faraday, was out. He had wanted Tiger to meet her, but then thought, what if they happen to like each other? What if Tiger charms her? He always had a way with girls. He had even convinced a girl to splat with him once, just so he could say, girls fall for me, literally. That poor girl. It'll be like Romeo and Juliet, he had told her, except we get to come back. Needless to say, the girl's parents were livid, and after she was revived, they forbade her to see Tiger ever again. Tiger shrugged it off. What can I say? Her life is a tale told by idiots, which Rowan believed was a very bad Shakespeare misquote. And it is. Very true. It's a very good one. The thought of Citra falling for Tiger, just figuratively, made Rowan a bit nauseated because Rowan likes Citra because they like each other. Yeah, they want to kiss for sure. Both of them. I think they both have the hots for each other. It's not like one-sided. They totally both like each other. And it's sad because they can never really be together. That's like a real Romeo and Juliet because Romeo and Juliet couldn't be together. Where was I? Okay. This is it, Tiger said when he looked around the place. It's just a house. What did you expect? A secret underground lair? Actually, yeah, or something like it. I mean, look at this furniture. I can't believe he makes you live in this hellhole. It's not so bad. Come on, I'll show you something cool. He took Tiger to the weapons den, which, as expected, Tiger found truly impressive. This is so edge. I've never seen so many knives. And are those guns? I've only seen pictures. He took a pistol off the wall and looked at the barrel. Don't do that. Calm down. I'm a splatter, not a blaster. Rowan took it away from him anyway, and in the time it took to put it back on the wall, Tiger had taken down a machete and was swishing it through the air. Think I could borrow this? Absolutely not. Come on, he's got so many, he'll never miss it. Tiger, Rowan knew, was the very definition of bad idea. That had always been a part of the fun of being his friend. But now that was a major liability. Rowan grabbed Tiger's arm, kicked him behind the knee to buckle his leg, and spun him to the ground in a single Bakator move. Whoa! Rowan just took his friend down. Just straight up like, martial arts, that guy. Then he held Tiger's arm at an unnatural angle, with just enough leverage for it to hurt. What the hell? Tiger said through gritted teeth. Drop the machete now. Tiger did, and just then, they heard the front door being opened. Rowan let go. Be quiet. he said in a power whisper. He peeked out the door, but he couldn't see who had come in. Stay here, he told Tiger, and then he slipped out to find Citra closing the front door behind her. She must have been running because she wore a workout outfit that was much more revealing than Rowan needed at the moment. What did I tell you? It drained far too much blood from his brain, so he focused on her apprentice armband to remind himself the hormonal responses were strictly forbidden. Citra looked up and gave him an obligatory greeting. Hey, Rowan. Hey. Something wrong? No. Why are you just standing there? Where should I be standing? She rolled her eyes and went into the bathroom, closing the door. Rowan slipped back into the weapons den. Who is it? Asked Tiger. Is it what's her name? I want to meet your competition. Maybe she'll give me immunity or something else. No, Rowan told him. It's Scythe Faraday, and he'll glean you on the spot if he finds you here. Suddenly, Tiger's bravado evaporated. Oh, crap. What are we going to do? Calm down. He's taking a shower. As long as you're quiet, I can get you out. They came out into the hallway. Sure enough, the sound of the shower hissed behind the closed bathroom door. He's washing off the blood? Yeah, there was a lot of it. He led Tiger to the front door and did everything short of pushing him out. Okay, so Rowan, smart, but also dumb. You know, shouldn't have brought Tiger over, but also pretty smart in lying to him about, and trying to get him out the door. So, you know, half and half. 50-50 shot. Rowan's going to get it. I mean, it is a 50-50 shot. Either one of them are going to get it, but I feel like, you know, well, whatever. We're very close to the end of this chapter. Okay. After being an apprentice for nearly 3 months, Citra couldn't deny that she wanted to be chosen by Scythe Faraday to receive the ring. She didn't want it before, and now she does. As much as she resisted, as much as she told herself this was not the life for her, she had come to see its importance and how good a Scythe she could be. She had always wanted to live a life of substance and to make a difference. As a Scythe, she would. Yes, she would have blood on her hands, but blood can be a cleansing thing. Okay, maybe? Yeah, they got really lucky. It was certainly treated such as in Bakator. Citra found Black Widow Bakator to be the most physically demanding thing she had ever done. Their trainer was Scythe Yingxing, who used no weapons but his own hands and feet to glean. Whoa. He had taken a vow of silence. It seemed every Scythe had surrendered something of themselves, not because they had to, but because they chose to, as a way to pay for the lives they took. What would you give up? Rowan once asked Citra. The question made her uncomfortable. If I become a Scythe, I'm giving up my life, aren't I? I think that's enough. You're also giving up a family, Rowan reminded her. She nodded, not wanting to speak to it. The idea of having a family was so far off to her, the idea of not having one felt equally distant. It was hard to have feelings about something she was years away from even considering. Besides, such things had to be kept far from her mind during Bakator. One's mind had to be clear. Citra had never taken any sort of martial art before. She had always been a non-contact sport kind of girl. Track, swimming, tennis, any sport that had clear lane, line, or net between her and her opponent. Bakator was the antithesis of that. Hand-to-hand, body-to-body combat. Even communication was entirely physical in the class. As their mute instructor would correct their positions as if they were action figures, it was all mind and body without the brash meditation of words. There were 8 in their class, and although their instructor was a Scythe, Citra and Rowan were the only apprentices. The others were junior Scythes in the first years of their Scythehood. There was one other girl who made no overtures of friendship to Citra. The girls were given no special treatment and were expected to be every bit the equal of the boys. Sparring was punishing in Bakator. Each match began simply enough with a ritualistic strutting around the circle, the two combatants physically taunting each other in a sort of aggressive stance. Then things got serious and brutal. All nature of kicks and punches and body slams. Today, she sparred against Rowan. He had more finesse to his moves, but she had the advantage of speed. He was stronger, but he was also taller, which was not an asset. Citra's lower center of gravity made her more stable. All taken into account, they were evenly matched. She spun and gave Rowan a powerful kick to the chest that almost took him down. Good one, Rowan said. Scythe Yingxing zipped his own lip to remind them that there were no crosstalk during combat. She came at it from his left, and he countered so quickly she had no idea where his hand had come from. It was as if he suddenly had 3. She was thrown off balance, but only for an instant. She felt heat where his hand had connected with her side. There'll be a bruise, she grinned. He'll pay for that. Hi, Vignay. Welcome. We're almost done with this chapter. I'm just going to finish it up. Citra, our 2 main characters, Citra and Rowan, are in the middle of a Bakator fight. Not to the death, just like a regular fight to see who wins. Like they're training. She feinted left again, then came at him from the right with a full force of her body. She took him down and had him pinned, but it was as if gravity reversed. And suddenly she realized he had turned the tables. Now he was on top, pinning her. She could have flipped him again. She had the leverage, but she didn't do it. She could feel his heartbeat now, as if it were beating in her own chest. And she realized she wanted to feel that a little longer. She wanted to feel it more than she wanted to win the match. That made her angry. Angry enough to pull away from his grip and put some space between them. There was no lane line, no net, nothing to keep them apart but the wall of her will. But that wall kept losing bricks. Scythe Ying Zing signaled the end of the match. Citra and Rowan bowed to each other, then took their places on opposite sides of the circle as 2 others were called up to spar. Citra watched intently, determined not to give Rowan a single glance. What did I tell you? They like each other. Oh my God. I hate it though, because I know what happens. Okay. I'm going to save actually the next journal entry for the next part because I think it goes with the next chapter. So I'm stopping right before chapter 11, which is on page 111. That's actually perfect. We're on page 111, starting chapter 11. It's a perfect place to stop so we can pick up next time right there. The 3 vocab words that I put up, if you have more vocabulary words, write them down in the comments, send it to me, the words that you need me to look up or want to review. But the ones I put up on the screen are the ones we've read so far, kind of had to look up ourselves. Obsequious, which I'm pretty sure means showing overly pleasing behavior to somebody to try and get them to be on your good side. A sycophant is a person who acts that way. It's so obsequious is the behavior. Sycophant is the person who does it. And incendiary means to be able to be lit on fire, I believe. So I'm going to come back next week to finish up part 2 of Scythe. There are, I think, 6 parts in this book, so it's going to take us probably a week or so to get through this book. But we can do it. No problem. No problem. Yeah. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the first part of part 2 of Scythe. I'm really enjoying this book. If you guys read ahead, I highly encourage you to do so if you're interested in it. It's a really great series. I highly, highly recommend it. I haven't read the rest of the books yet, but I'm going to, definitely. Okay, guys, everyone, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, students of all ages, we are coming to the end of our broadcast today. Here we go. Do a little outro with some lo-fi. Thank you for watching. Thank you, everybody who came to say hi. Thank you so much, TJ. Thank you, Kaden. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. I'll see you guys again soon. Enjoy your summer. Have a great evening, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
だけがで読み直している